I'll be honest, I've never really liked it when people use the term become a better reader, because when a lot of people talk about, like, oh, here's how you become a better reader, I honestly feel like what they mean to say with the advice they're giving is how to become a more fulfilled reader. And again, becoming a better reader, like, kind of implies some sort of objectivity to how you consume books, which again, unless like you're learning more words or learning how to read sentences better, I think becoming a better reader is not the terminology you should be using. I think I like to say ways to become a more fulfilled reader. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I got back into reading in 2022 as an adult, so that's about 3 years. And I'd like to tell you 3 things that I have done to become a more fulfilled reader. Now, if you're new here, my name is Robin. I go by The Eclectus on YouTube, TikTok, a few other things. My link tree is it's in my bio. But let's talk about becoming a more fulfilled reader. And just a disclaimer, these things are all subjective. They've helped me over the past 3 years, but they might not be for you. In fact, there are some things I've talked to my friends about where they specifically said, like, oh, I don't really see myself doing that, or that's not for me. Again, this is just a personal journey I've gone through. With that being said, let's talk about the first of these 3 things, and that is reading multiple books at the same time. Like, obviously not at the same time, like while you're reading, but having multiple books that you're reading in the same time frame instead of just focusing on one. I remember when I was first told this, I was very skeptical, and it actually took me a while to try it to begin with. Like, the first year that I was really back into reading as an adult, I would only read one book at a time because I'm already a slow reader, and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go through books slower and get more distracted. But what I found is that I typically have one like primary read and one secondary read. Like right now, I'm reading Dune Messiah, or Children of Dune. I'm reading Children of Dune, and I am also reading the memoirs of some guy who used to run the National Theatre in the UK. And typically, like 6 days a week, 5 days a week, I'll be reading Children of Dune, and then every once in a while, I'll be reading the memoirs. Now, I feel like this serves to do a lot of things. One, and I think the biggest thing that's helped me become a more fulfilled reader is when I get to a sluggish part of my primary read. In the past, before I picked up this habit, I'd kind of just put the book down for a while and do nothing to make up for it, you know? And then eventually be like, oh, I should really start reading it again and push through. With this new 2-book at a time method, it's like, oh, this is kind of getting slow, so I can get back into my other book. And then once I feel ready to take on that slow part of the book I'm reading, I can then hop back in, make it more seamless, and I'm still in that reader mindset. And again, you don't need to be reading both books like an equal amount, or even like, again, my secondary book I read, it takes me a few months to finish just because it's a side project. It's not the main thing I'm reading, not the main thing I really want to read, but it's something I want to read, but it's not like the thing that I want to put 100% of my energy towards, which actually takes me to the second thing that's made me a more fulfilled reader, and that is actively going out of my way to find books I may otherwise not read. I don't think it's a bad thing to read books that are popular or trendy. In fact, I read books that are popular and trending. I read Song of Achilles, Circe, when those were really big online. Legends and Lattes, I read when it was pretty big online. You know, I think it's good because when you're reading popular books, a lot more people have read them, so you can talk about them a lot more easily. And like more niche titles don't really have as big, especially in person, like outside of internet spheres, you don't have as much of an opportunity to bring up. But I think reading niche books or less popular books is important. If you are reading what everyone else is reading, I mean, you're thinking what everyone else is thinking to an extent, and it really, I think, makes you more fulfilled when you have a wider palette of both books in the popular space and books you may otherwise not have read. Because when you're reading these books you may have otherwise never read, you may find one of these books to be your favorite book that may have gone undiscovered to you because it's just not openly talked about. Now, where to find these books? I mean, there's multiple ways to do it, multiple ways I do it. One great way is just going through the library. Libraries typically have pretty big selections of books that aren't the most popular, especially smaller libraries I've found. My local library, I found plenty of books that I otherwise may not have found. Thrift stores / antique stores also typically carry selections of these kinds of books. I feel like the non super popular books. And I'm not saying this to like be a hipster. I think there are benefits, at least I've gotten benefits from these books. It is frustrating though when you're reading a book that not many people have read. And you really have very few people to talk to about it unless you can like somehow convince them to read it. But since I have that 2-book policy, that doesn't really affect me too much, I can read these popular books and these niche finds at the same time, which then brings me to point number 3, which actually it doesn't really bring me to that point because point 1 and 2 are pretty connected. Point 3, which I think is the biggest thing that's really helped me become more fulfilled while I'm reading, get more enjoyment out of the reading I'm doing, and gets me more benefits as a reader. That third point is journal about your books. Journal what you're reading while you're reading it. I write reviews on Goodreads, and not everyone writes reviews on Goodreads, even though a lot of people rate books. But I write reviews. I've actually found writing reviews has given me more clarity as to what I read. I'll write a review, and like beforehand, I'm thinking the book is like a solid, like 4 or 5 stars, or a solid 1 or 2 stars. And realize while I'm writing the review, hey, I actually like that book a little more than I thought. Or hey, I actually like that book a little less than I thought. But I didn't say, oh, writing reviews makes me more fulfilled, which I guess it does, but I think most people, not most people do that, but most people who would do that already do that. Most people who would find fulfillment from that. But instead, writing down what I think of a book, what I'm thinking about a book while I'm reading it. Because I realized, and this is a more recent addition to my reading regimen, is that I realized while I was writing a review for a pretty long book I was reading that like I was kind of forgetting how I felt early on. I remember I felt one way when I first started the book, and like that changed throughout, And yeah, our perceptions of what we're reading do change, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, as the plot goes on, as we read more, as new material enters your conscience, And I've found that when I'm not writing down actively how I feel about the book, my review or my thoughts on the book in the end might be a bit skewed by the recency bias of the last 50 or 100 pages. A big gulp. But yeah, I think it benefits you as a reader to keep track of how you feel about the book. Now, I do this through journaling / blogging on Tumblr, which is also in my link tree, The Eclectus. I do like a weekly media blog where I just put down, here's how I felt, like here's what I consumed, how much I consumed, and what I thought about it during the week. But you can also get the same effect through like annotation, which I do annotate certain books, especially books that like I really want to delve into and look at things like symbolism and the intricacies of dialogue and character relations, like books that I really want to like not just read but fully understand, especially when I'm rereading books, which I don't do often, but I still do. I'm currently rereading Fellowship right now. Fellowship of the Ring, to be exact. But yeah, I think it's really important, especially if you are someone who already writes reviews on platforms such as Goodreads, like I do. I think it is rather important to document how you feel about the book going on as it goes on. And again, your thoughts on a book are going to change from page 1 to the last page. And I think your review should reflect that. It doesn't have to, obviously. It's your review. Don't let me tell you what to do or nothing. But so yeah, the three things that I as a recap, the three things that I have done or picked up that have made me more fulfilled as a reader is 1, reading multiple books at the same time. 2, picking up titles that I may have otherwise never heard of, or going out of my way to find stuff that otherwise I would have never read. And 3, actively keeping track of my feelings and thoughts on a book while I'm reading that and keeping that written down somewhere, either in the book or, in my case, online or in a journal. Again, it is a subjective thing, though, especially like the of what I do. Of the 3 things I listed, a lot of people are very anti reading multiple books at the same time, which I get it. I mean, I used to be that way, and even still, I fully get why people who have tried that and not liked it, I get why they haven't liked it, you know? It really depends on what kind of person you are. It don't make you better or worse. But definitely these aren't for everyone, and in fact, you may have some things you've picked up that have made you feel like a more fulfilled reader that I wouldn't really be privy to, you know? It's all subjective. I always try new things to better interact with the media that I consume, and sometimes those things are very helpful. Sometimes those things, I mean, I drop them, you know? That's just me. But I do want to know, put in the comments, what do you do that what have you picked up, or what habits do you do that make you more fulfilled of a reader, that bring you more enjoyment from the hobby? Because it is a hobby, and we should interact with it in a way that makes us feel good or gives us benefit, you know? And I think there's always room for improvement. You know, I'm not actively like beating myself up for not being the most what's the word I'm looking for, the most productive reader ever. You know, I'm a slow reader too. So, but yeah, I'm curious, what do you think? Have you tried any of the 3 things that I listed? Do you have some things that I didn't even mention? I'm always looking for new stuff, you know? Put your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.